Wireless Mike, hello. Good to see you. Oh, yeah, it's a slow day. It is indeed. I don't know, man. I'm something about the fact that we once again have a private business relating to the Titanic getting a bunch of people killed. 100+ years after the, was it 100 years? I don't know. A lot of years after the Titanic crashed and got people killed. It infuriates me. It infuriates me, and it makes me wonder if we didn't learn our lesson then in this very famous um in this very famous oceanic disaster. And now we have a ship called the Titan going down in the same area. Uh, Under similar conditions. Something about it makes me wonder if we'll learn this time. And if we didn't learn last time, how can we make sure we learn this time? I think impatience is a virtue when it comes to the law in our country. Impatience is a virtue. I would very much like us to start demanding that these people get tossed in prison. There's frankly nothing else that is acceptable. Even if everybody's rescued, they endangered these people's lives needlessly for a frivolous thing. Didn't have to be done. This was a pleasure cruise. I realized somebody was one of the people on board was a scholar. Good for them. It was still an unnecessary thing to do. Ask James Cameron for his footage. He literally, funny enough, when he made the movie Titanic, he said it was to fund his hobby of diving down and seeing the Titanic. The point is, we didn't have to send 5 people down there, and we certainly didn't have to send them in a boat that was only going to tell you it was about to implode milliseconds before it happened. All right, here's a piece of delicious irony. I'll just do the proper intro. But Trump might go to prison with a bunch of people that he convinced to do something that got him put in prison and then didn't pardon. That's delicious. Donald John Trump is looking at a scenario where he might be sent to prison, wherein his worst nightmare would come true. He would be forced to hang out with the kind of folks that voted for him. He has famously disparaged them. Donald Trump abhors the sort of folks that he relies on to pay his legal bills and to make him socially relevant at all. The MAGA types. And if you want real proof that he doesn't give a damn about them, how about he asks them to give up their lives and their livelihoods and their freedom in order to help him with a coup, because he is a sore loser. And when they did that, when they answered his call, effed up though it was, he didn't bail them out. He kept all the bailing out of folks, all the he said he'd pay their legal bills. He didn't do that. And he saved the pardons for his wealthy friends, his famous friends. If you want a pardon from Trump, you better have a podcast and with at least let's say at least 100,000 followers. You got to have done a couple of spots on Fox News if you want to get a pardon from Trump. You better have a gold album out, because if you're a regular person, no, you don't get a pardon from Trump. Here's Ari Melber driving that home.
We're about 1 week out from the federal criminal arraignment that Trump did try to prevent. We all remember he was forced to sit silently in that Miami courtroom. Outside, cameras showed a very small crowd. The scene was nothing like what Trump had threatened for months. The talk of riots or unrest, or how the nation would not stand for his indictment. And I'll show you all that in this special report right now. We could also tell you that heading into the second arraignment, Trump posted the message, "See you in Miami," and he did some conservative media calling for protests, reinforcing ultimately how tiny his megaphone was on this score when it comes to summoning a giant crowd to protest a government proceeding.
Look, our country has to protest. We need strength at this point, and everyone's afraid to do anything. They're afraid to talk, and they have to go out and they have to protest peacefully.
Now, Miami police had security ready for a crowd that could top 50,000. And after what we all saw as an under-response to the January 6th gathering, that kind of prep could make sense. You prepare for the most or the worst, but
I don't know what the but's going to be there. Yes, 100%. That's what you do. Just for the record, there he was calling him to come down and participate in his coup. Credit where it's due, he said the word peaceful there. But on the day, he said, you got to fight like hell. Notice that those crowds are so much thinner. You guys have talked about this in the comments. That's because his most loyal people are serving time for him right now. The people that might have turned up to that thing, a big chunk of them got arrested for doing exactly that and doing what he would have wanted. Violence in his name. I wonder how they're going to feel about him when he goes to prison. It can't go well for Trump. If let's say they hate him, well, then that's going to go real bad for him. And the irony is the sort of thing that they write plays about. It's also not going to go well if they love him. Because there's nothing Donald Trump despises more than gross MAGA types. You know, your QAnon shamans, your small business owners, those types. Somebody's boss, and usually a bad boss, but not a truly rich person, not a famous person. He can't stand those types. And those people being able to demand his attention constantly, oh, it'll be hell for him.
One point that got less attention at last week's arraignment was the meager turnout of just about 500 people. No signs of militias or apparent hardliners like those who showed up for the criminal insurrection. The number of Trump supporters was sometimes literally dwarfed by the number of media present. You could see that in certain scenes. And there was talk of how Trump drew a fizzled response and really something that boiled down to a circus-like crowd, as the New York Times put it, including a Trump backer walking around and then another Trump critic carrying.
Look at that guy. Anybody that would dress up like that disgusts Donald Trump.
A pig head on an actual spike. The low turnout had MAGA supporters contemplating who among them might be federal agents. And you take this together now, we've all been through it, we've taken a breath, and you may say, okay, well, that's a standard outcome, even a less than newsworthy outcome. So what more is there to say? Well, there's a reason why this is our top story tonight and our special report, because there's a lot more behind the scenes. Donald Trump's failure to get anywhere near another January 6th action is not only a good thing for public safety and for the justice system. It is very much not a standard outcome that Donald Trump or his allies vowed to achieve. So it's actually worth noting how we got here, why this matters tonight, because even self-proclaimed serious people like Senator Lindsey Graham was out there vowing riots. Now, he was wrong about what would happen. He was also wrong to use this rhetoric to apparently threaten the justice system's operation with the fear of riots. Graham, a former military lawyer, is supposed to know better.
And I'll say this. If there's a prosecution of Donald Trump for mishandling classified information after the Clinton debacle, which you presided over and did a hell of a good job, there'll be riots in the streets.
It is 3 times Trump has tried to summon people to protest the justice system and failed to get any kind of large gathering, let alone another insurrection-type gathering. It's a glaring contrast to the people he brought to D.C. and infamously hurled at the Capitol in the actual sedition, which overran police, which was criminally effective at breaching the Capitol.
I like that phrase, hurled at the Capitol. That's a good way to put it. Look at the folks in there. You ever seen Donald Trump hanging out with folks that wear, what are those, like a road worker's hoodie? Look at the, well, there's a black guy there, so I haven't actually seen Donald Trump hanging out with a whole lot of black folks in a non-professional capacity. Guy with the leather cowboy hat. Look, it's not me caring about aesthetics. I'm talking about what Trump cares about. Trump obsesses over that. He didn't want to hire John Bolton because the man had one redeeming feature, which is a glorious mustache. I truly hope we get the special irony. I hope the film on Donald Trump ends with the slow zoom out as he's surrounded by yakking maniacs who are rattling off their QAnon theories. And he realizes this will be the rest of his days. I'm looking forward to that.
And that crowd, if you're wondering about just the numbers, we checked, far
10,000?
larger than these gatherings we just touched on. It was about 10,000, including many vigilantes and now convicted criminals who were following the literal calls to overthrow that peaceful transfer of power and the election Trump lost. Trump demanded their attendance at what he billed was a wild gathering that, fueled by election lies, is used at the debate stage to embrace the now convicted Proud Boys militia. Law enforcement and journalists found that all of what Trump did there, which is very similar to what he tried to do this time, in a very real way, it energized extremist groups. It operated and radicalized some political supporters and turned them into people willing to storm the Capitol. And that threat of violence does not function on its own. Trump has tried to summon the fear of another January 6th, quite literally to intimidate the very prosecutors now doing these cases, and to kind of try to corrupt the DOJ from the outside.
Listen to what he said. I had a whole rant about this. I was advised by wise people to chill out a little bit, give it a little more time. But I'll touch on it lightly. Ari Melber just described what Trump tried to do surrounding these indictments as being very much like what he tried to do before January 6th. Now, just because our Department of Justice has failed us doesn't mean that we are required then to pretend like we're morons. The people in charge of investigating this know what a threat domestic terrorism is. Specifically, right-wing domestic terrorism. You know, once upon a time, there were left-wing domestic terrorists. And these were not good people either. Just because I would have agreed with what they wanted to eventually have happen in some cases does not mean I agreed with their methods. But that was a thing once upon a time. And we're talking about mid-70s. Since the days of Reagan, we have had right-wing terrorism. And even a fraction of what these people have done. I'm talking the Oklahoma City bombing. I'm talking Waco. I'm talking Caesar Sayoc mailing bombs to politicians. I'm talking the Wolverine Watchman, to my undying shame in my own state, trying to kidnap the governor. Zero her out. Even a fraction of what they've done is far worse than the absolute worst things the left-wing domestic terrorists ever did. You want to know what the left-wing terrorists did? They robbed banks. Kind of stuff right-wingers praise in their own weird way. They burned down buildings when nobody was in them. People in charge of investigating this know what a danger it is when Donald Trump calls people out to this. And I do not think it is wise for us to fail to learn from all the times in the past we have chosen to pretend like everything's fine in the hope that it will make everything fine. It does not work that way. And in particular, it does not work that way with these people. I had a whole Jack Smith rant. I'm going to set it aside. Because truthfully, it's my members here are wise folks. And they made a good point, which is, I'm not a lawman in any way, shape, or form, and Jack Smith is, and maybe he knows something I don't, and okay. He's done a pretty solid job so far. He's earned a little bit of leeway, but I'll tell you, he hasn't earned all that much. Because the Justice Department in the United States has had second, third, fourth, and fifth chances to get it right, and they failed every time. But we should not be patient with these folks, and we should not, in my opinion, allow Donald Trump to keep posting these things. There should be, in some form, I feel, a court order preventing this, acknowledging that it's a danger to you and me. It's a danger to anybody working at any of the places he has been indicted and will continue to be indicted, because he's done a whole hell of a lot of crimes, it would seem. Just a thought.
I mentioned this once before on our show, but I want to bring this to our attention right now, thinking about those fizzled crowds, because we had that search at Mar-a-Lago. We didn't even know publicly then how bad it was and how much evidence was found at the time. It came out over time. But Trump, after that, dispatched an ally to pass along a secret back-channel message. Trump wanted Attorney General Garland to know people around the country were enraged by the search. And Trump added, according to a New York Times report, a kind of mafia-style threat to Garland. The country is on fire. What can I do to reduce the heat? Trump was suggesting that he had the power to do that he could either reduce the heat or, if Garland didn't play ball, increase the heat. Now, that may sound quite brazen for someone literally under investigation by DOJ for that very approach to attacking the Capitol, and a kind of legal review over whether he was turning up the heat in a way that could be charged. But early on, remember, DOJ officials were actually afraid of even mentioning or probing Trump over that very Jan 6th attack.
Get him, Mari.
You're looking at that Washington Post report, which is new this week, a bombshell that showed there were fears there. And you take that all together, and you can see that while we can't read anyone's mind, the public pressure, the private back-channeling, the very real recent trauma and lived history of that attack all combines to sort of potentially strengthen the hand of someone who should be just a citizen, just a subject of a probe, and now recently just a defendant. But you have Trump's secret pressure with the public attacks. That is the framework that is much larger than Trump. It is an increasingly authoritarian playbook trying to end America's rule of law that Trump has been leading across the wider Republican Party. Since DOJ has indicted now over 1,000 people in connection with January 6th, 570 convictions from guilty pleas. That's like no fight, no contest. And the defendants who tried their luck at trial are losing badly. 78 found guilty, convicted by a jury of their peers at trial. Now, there are still questions over whether that January 6th probe will go to the top. Will it reach the elites or the political lawyers and insiders who weren't physically on the ground that day? But the deterrence is already working because it is obvious that foot soldiers are getting busted and facing real prison time. Oath Keepers founder and January 6th leader Stuart Rhodes got 18 years for sedition. One of his co-conspirators got 12. Just today, we can update you with a report on the rioter who brutally tased an officer in those clashes, got over 12 years in prison. That's hard time and it's hard facts. And while Trump may try to lie or minimize the consequences of this or the awareness of this to his supporters, who do seem to hang on sometimes his every word, well, the word is still getting out in MAGA circles. To give you just one example, there's a lawyer for January 6 defendants, which is a pretty hardline group, warning publicly, if you want to demonstrate at these arraignments and other things, quote, you must proceed with caution. Garland wants throngs of arrests. Now, for context, I can mention that lawyer also is trying to spin the warning into an allegation that there's unjust prosecution at DOJ. But the core point and reality also comes through. Even an advocate and a defender of these January 6th defendants, and they have the right to counsel, is making the point that you will get arrested and you could get convicted. And if you get convicted, you will be in prison.
On a quick side note, I think that's an interesting message, or rather an interesting lesson in messaging to these folks. Now, that person is playing into the idea that they're playing into the frankly the conspiracy theory that what Garland wants is you know what, is it a conspiracy theory? That is what Garland wants. He wants to impress the American public with the number of people he gets and use that as an excuse to say he took it seriously. And we've seen we've seen evidence that he failed to take steps to go after the organizers. So that might not actually, I might have been wrong in my first thought on that. That might just be a harsh truth. But I find that lower third very interesting. Prison deters MAGA vigilantes. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Can you imagine what it would do if we actually put the person that sent them there in prison? So all I wanted to point out there is that the worst possible fate for first of all, okay, I definitely wanted to point out that having the law applied to them has an effect on right-wingers. More so than words. With a lefty, they will happily go to prison and join others who have gone to prison and flood the system with inmates over words. Because on the left, it's principles that are appealed to. But on the right, at least from what I've seen, it would appear that the principles are defined by consequences alone. In other words, they will decide what is right or wrong based on their perceived gain or loss. And a lot of folks that saw people go to prison over January 6th suddenly started having the opinion, oh, well, you've got to be, you can't act a fool at these things, you know. Suddenly that's their opinion. But the other point, and I think the funnier point, which I want to end with here, is that Donald Trump's worst nightmare, his version of hell, is to be surrounded by the very people he conned. And I think we should give that gift to the world. Put Donald Trump in the very same prison that all these January 6ers are being sent to. Because he deserves it. On many levels. Oh. Are more equal. I have to go, but I'll leave that stream running for review, then watch it again later. Oh. You are an officer and a gentleman. I appreciate you. Thank you. That's exactly the kind of sneaky, clever attitude that we very much encourage here. And Are More Equal says, am I fashionably late? You're fashionable whatever time you arrive at, my friend. Hello, Jess Rush. Wicked Foxy Dragon. In Trump translation, peaceful really means violent. Yeah. He wouldn't be in general population, though, just because he was the former president. Probably not. No. But I still like the fact that he would have to share the same air as the rest of them. Just the idea that they were under the same roof would get under his skin in a way that almost nothing else could. Steve Floor says Trump is going to invite them all to Mar-a-Lardo. Oh, good God. Wicked Foxy Dragon. I think I saw a little something else. Oh, yeah. Talking about the cruise earlier. The Titanic cruise. They didn't have to go on the cruise. If they willingly went, if they willingly went, I don't know. We can really blame anyone else. Sure, we can. Absolutely, we can, and we should. And here's why. The people that purchased the tickets for the cruise, aren't supposed to be experts on what makes a submarine work. If somebody is selling a service that says, "I'll give you a submarine tour," the buyer has to be able to assume that it's safe, that it's been checked out, that it's not a death trap they're being asked to step into. Even if they signed a waiver, there is such a thing as a contract which is too unreasonable to be agreed to. Even if you say, I acknowledge that there's a risk of death here. If we're talking about things like the irresponsible, I mean, if it turns out to be true, these accusations made, and the irresponsible amount of the irresponsible lack of safety precautions, it is absolutely not on the passengers, in my opinion, to take a course on how submarines work, just to ensure that the one they paid a ton of money for a trip on doesn't kill them. Dawned on me, I'm fuming. Garland waited a year to start investigating Trump's role in January 6th. Yeah, absolutely. Ooh. The anti-corporatists, or better yet, put them all in different presents for the camp for a game. Fair enough. Jess Rush, you are more likely to sink a boat than crash a plane. I've been on a billion flights, like no lie, a billion, and I'm here to talk about it. More likely to get in a car crash, take the flight. Yeah, I believe it. Jess Rush, I still can't believe that I had to say out loud that Fox did a good interview, right? I mean, good God. Brett Baer, of all people. Real good interview. I don't know. Every time I say that, I have to check, make sure I'm not smelling toast. Make sure I didn't have some sort of a seizure, because it's the craziest thing. All right. So I never know when the live audience always gets both takes of what I think the intro should be. Let's talk about Eileen Cannon, though. That's what I want to talk about with you guys next. Because, why did I say, I credited this as Midas Touch? It was not. Ooh, that's embarrassing, and I will have to correct that in the description. Anyway, Judge Eileen Cannon. Yeah, I'm going to record it from the start. I heard that it's fine the way she's handling things. I disagree. We're going to talk about that. For those that don't know, Judge Eileen Cannon, during the documents investigation, made a couple of rulings blatantly in the president's favor, essentially saying that because the former president's favor, essentially saying that because Donald Trump was a former president, he should be treated differently under the law. And she got knocked down by her judicial bosses, whatever that structure is, the people just above her in Florida. They essentially said to her, number one, you didn't have jurisdiction here, you shouldn't have chimed in. Number two, your ruling is nonsensical. There's nothing in the law to suggest that you could have arrived at that decision in an honest way. For context, she really does not have the qualifications for the job she was given. She's unusually young. She is bizarrely inexperienced. But it's a Donald Trump appointee, so you know that her experience had nothing to do with it. It was entirely based on how much she praised the Führer. So, when it came time for this part of the trial, not a different criminal proceeding, but now the investigation has advanced to the point where charges are filed, arraignment, yada, yada, yada. Her name came up. And the law says if the public could reasonably doubt her ability to judge this fairly, a judge shall recuse themselves. I've heard folks say, well, so far, in this part of the trial, she hasn't done anything wrong. And I would agree with that. Since this newest time that her name came up in the draw, she didn't do anything wrong. But she already did make two, not one, two terrible judgments. Two terrible rulings that got overturned and showed her lack of judgment, at least in regards to Donald Trump, in this very investigation. I understand that there's strategy involved here. And I'm not going to jump fully into the we got to get rid of Eileen Cannon because of this, that, or the other thing vote just yet, despite what we're about to play from Mr. Brian Tyler Cohen. But I do want to point out that she should have, based upon the reading of the law, as I understand it, as Mr. Michael Popak read it to me with Mr. Ben Meiselas and all of us when they did a stream about it, she should have recused herself immediately. So, if she was going to be fair about this, the opportunity has already come and gone. And so if she has been doing nothing objectionable except for not recusing herself so far, what that tells me is she's keeping, as Popak would say, she's keeping her powder dry. She knows she won't get away with it right now. And so she will do her corrupt whatever at the end. Want to talk about wasting time? How about you have the entire trial and then it turns out it was useless because you were talking to somebody who is a MAGA adherent who should not be a judge of anything because they cannot judge reality. Here is Brian Tyler Cohen talking about Jack Smith's dwindling opportunities to formally request Eileen Cannon have nothing further to do with the case. It's worth considering. Even I'm not necessarily in the boat of saying we should definitely do it. Let's hear what the man has to say, because I believe there's an appearance by the one and only Glenn Knock 'em Out Kirshner. Kirshner.
So, Glenn, we've got some news here. Trump's federal trial regarding the stolen classified documents has been scheduled for August 14th. Now, what's the likelihood that the trial actually starts on that date?
Slim to none, and none is fading fast.
Ha.
It's important to know that the federal law, the Speedy Trial Act, provides that somebody should be taken to trial within 70 days of the date they are arraigned. And that would put it sometime in August. So I guess I'm not shocked that Judge Cannon set a trial date that is within that 70-day window, because that's what the law provides. However, there are so many escape hatches, so many different reasons and opportunities for parties to continue the case, to convince the judge that they can't try it that quickly, that I would not bet $1 of my own money that we're going to see a Trump trial in August.
Well, Glenn, to that point, Judge Aileen Cannon ordered all pretrial motions by July 24th. So once we have an idea of what all those pretrial motions are going to be that will be filed by Trump and his team, could we then have a better understanding of what the actual trial date would be? So, for example, if we know that the Trump team is going to file 10 pretrial motions, are we able to look at that and say, okay, we can get these litigated in 2 months, and so let's plan for a mid-October trial, for example?
You know, there's not an easy answer to that question, but I think the best answer is it's probably not that much of a gauge, because you can file 100 motions in limine. Each one could be resolved in 5 minutes. It could involve a discrete ruling from the judge regarding, for example, whether a certain piece of evidence is admissible or not, and they could move on to the next motion. However, they could file 2, 3, 4 really dense, complex legal motions that will take lots of testimony to resolve. One motion could end up taking a week. So I don't think it will be much of a gauge. It will tell us something about how long it will take to resolve all the motions once we see the entire universe of motions filed by the party, but it's not going to tell us all that much about timing.
I trust that answer because it was annoyingly nuanced and unsatisfactory. That tells me it's probably dead on. Great question, though, from Brian Tyler Cohen. Hadn't even considered that.
Could the Trump team add more pretrial motions after that July 24th deadline, or is that deadline a hard and fast deadline in terms of the motions that will be introduced?
Yeah, great question. They can only with leave of the court. So only if they show good cause why they were unable to meet with the original motions deadline. But let me add that original motions deadline that has been set, I suspect will slide some once the parties get in court, get in front of Judge Aileen Cannon, and probably, among other things, try to get this case designated as a complex case. That's a term of art in the law and in the rules of procedure. If the judge agrees that this is a complex case, then all speedy trial deadlines are kind of off, and then the whole timetable becomes extended. So
it's a I'm doing Kirshner dirty. He looks like a Van Gogh painting. Who did the Scream? I don't remember. Still, but we're gonna keep it. Sorry, brother. I know it's a term of art, but just for the record, this is not a terribly complex case. This is, in fact, as open and shut, it would appear, just based on what we know. And we don't even know everything the Justice Department knows. Just based on what we know, this is not a terribly complex case. Did he have permission to have the documents? Yes or no? No. Did he return the documents when asked? Yes or no? No. Did he lie about it? Yes or no? Yes. Did he admit to lying about it? On camera, multiple times. In TV interviews. This week. I think last week. In recordings. In a book. Yes. Pretty simple case. That said, the right to a speedy trial is supposed to be the defendant's right. That's what they're talking about. The defendant's right. So if, for example, you live in the world, you and I live in, not what Donald Trump lives in, and bail is set at what is to you an obscenely high amount of money. Say $500,000, you got to come up with 10% of it. If you don't have $50,000 just sitting around, you have to sit in jail until that trial comes by. Even if you're found eventually to be innocent, you're still going to have to do a couple of months in jail. That's the justice system you and I live under. So, in other words, it leans towards the defendant as to whether or not they can have a longer time until the trial. That said, hear me out. I do think Aileen Cannon is corrupt. Hands down, she's demonstrated she's corrupt. I have reason to doubt, reasonable reason to doubt, her judgment. In this case, in all cases, frankly, but in this case in particular. And even having said that, I don't think it guarantees that we're going to get just bad decision after bad decision from her. What I would worry about, and what this is where I would caution against optimism with Aileen Cannon. What I would worry about is that she doesn't show her hand up front. She gets rough with Trump. Ooh. By which I mean holds him to the standards that we would expect anybody else to do. That's how the courts get rough with rich people, is they treat them like normal people. Ooh, perish the thought. Like gross regulars. Until the end. And she says, I'm tossing the whole thing out. That's what I would worry about. So if she does one or two additional things that aren't just blatantly in praise of Donald Trump, I wouldn't. All the commentators who have generally legal backgrounds and therefore really want to support the justice system as it is, because there is I say there's a priest-like calling for the news. It's true. A lot of news people feel that. It's the same thing with the law, though. It's like criticizing Catholicism to a priest. A lot of these folks feel like you're attacking them when you point out a flaw in the way our system of justice works. And a lot of these folks, they will see Aileen Cannon, I don't know how to say it, can't really decide. Let's stick with Aileen for now. When they see Aileen Cannon not doing something blatantly in praise of Trump, they're going to say, "See, it's all fine. This is how it's supposed to work. You got to have faith in our system." No, you do not, and no, you should not, and you certainly should not take it as a sign that she's on the up and up. If she's strategic, she's smart enough to be a judge. She's smart enough to have passed the bar exam at some point, because I think she was a lawyer before that. Then she's smart enough to know how to sabotage this properly. But let's see what Kirshner has to say. Take anything he says over what I say 9 out of 10 times.
Kind of off, and then the whole timetable becomes extended. So I think it's good that right up front, Aileen Cannon is putting everybody on notice that she's going to,
including how he pronounces her name, Aileen. Okay.
Run a tight procedural ship, but I think we're going to see some of those deadlines begin to slide.
Now, obviously, with these pretrial motions, the goal for Trump and the Trump team is to delay. And we've spoken about this before, how the farther out Trump can push this case, the more likely it is that he'll be able to finish his run for president, hopefully win the presidency himself, and then use the levers of government to basically absolve himself of all guilt or to insulate himself from any accountability. So Trump's goal here is to delay. Is there any limit to how much Trump could delay by virtue of these pretrial motions, or is the sky the limit here?
The only limit is Judge Aileen Cannon and her willingness to be played by Donald Trump and give him the delay he seeks. Now, for the time being, it sure looks like we're going to be stuck with Judge Aileen Cannon. I doubt she's going to recuse herself, given that she is now entering orders in the case. I also
Let's hope she's into denial play. And if you get that joke, shut up.
am less confident that Jack Smith might file a motion to remove her from the case, given that, she is now setting deadlines, and it would almost feel like sour grapes if a motion to kick her off the case came in now from the prosecutors. So I actually think that window may have closed. So assuming we are stuck with Judge Aileen Cannon and some of the baggage she will bring as the presiding judge here, hopefully this first order setting.
Sorry, I gotta address that. It would almost feel like sour grapes. It would almost be improper. Whoa, it would almost offend. If you say Donald Trump doesn't have 8-pack abs, MAGA will accuse you of being a socialist, communist, Marxist, space alien. Who are you worried about offending? Here's the crazy thing. Is it legal? Okay. Then it's in your book of options. Is this a normal case? Would it normally be done? That's out the window, because this is not a normal case. We're deciding now how presidents are treated. Every step of this, how former presidents are treated. Every step of this, we are deciding in court. So, hey, MAGA, I know it ain't going to be easy to reach you. But here's something you can toss at your MAGA community members when this comes up that I'd like you to consider, because it'll throw them off for a second. It'll make them actually think for a moment, and we need more of that. Every step of this is deciding how former presidents will be treated. So if we let Donald Trump get away with all these kinds of things, that means if you get Joe Biden in the same position, say when he's out of office, if you want to go after him on this same case, if you truly believe what he did is the same thing, more or less, as what Trump did, and you have a hope that you'll get your own corrupt Justice Department because you believe that the Biden DOJ is to blame, you get your own in there, and you get Biden in a trial. Well, everything that happens to Trump is now precedent. So this is how Biden will be treated. So you have to ask yourself, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, did Trump do this or not in the court? That's ultimately what matters. It should be what matters, certainly. Is he guilty or is he not guilty? Where is the proper venue for determining that? It's a court of law. And if you think Trump is not guilty and Biden is guilty, you should ask yourself if you want Biden to be able to dance around like this. Do you want him getting all these freebies? You shouldn't. And by the way, he's appointed a lot of judges.
These deadlines, very early, very quick deadlines, is a sign of things to come, that she is going to insist that this case be tried promptly and efficiently, without a lot of delay and without a lot of shenanigans. Frankly, I think that will be good for the American people.
Yeah, I think it would be good too. I do want to stress, though, he's incorrect there. And I'm not saying this based off of my legal expertise, of which I acknowledge he has more. My legal expertise comes from more of a knowledge of how long you have to sit in court, which is all day, when you're waiting to get judged for a misdemeanor, which you absolutely did, and you're just there to tell the court, I'm way too poor to pay for this. Can you please charge me less? I'm sorry, I didn't strap my truck down properly. Ooh, I shouldn't have been parked on the curb. Oh, 34-year-olds don't normally hold on to the back of the truck and try to skateboard and then run over their neighbor's bushes. Look, we all live different lives. The point is, I'm talking about this from my perspective of knowing people, meeting a lot of them. And a sign that she's being responsible now just means she knows now, like all Republicans, now she knows there might be consequences if she's irresponsible. And if she plays it right, she can do the maximum amount of damage later. And she has demonstrated, at least we have reason to believe that she would do this. She's demonstrated a bias towards this particular person who gave her the job she has. Why is it even allowed that somebody who appointed you can be somebody you make a ruling on? That is not right. Shouldn't exist. Should not be allowed. And I really don't think that we should take a couple of good judgments from her, even good, a couple of standard judgments from her, as anything other than her covering her ass early on.
And for our democracy, because if she can actually force this case to trial in, let's say, late 2023 or very early 2024, resolve it before the primaries, resolve it obviously before November 2024, that will be a good thing, and that will kind of help clear the landscape for what hopefully will then be a legitimate campaign for the presidency.
To that point on scheduling, there was reporting that Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis had asked the chief judge of the courthouse down in Georgia not to schedule in-person trials or hearings for the weeks of August 7th and August 14th. That would suggest that we may see an arraignment on one of those weeks. Now, I realize, based on what you said, that the likelihood is pretty much zero that we'll see this federal case go to trial on August 14th. But if it happens that there is a conflict between a state prosecution and a federal prosecution, which one takes priority? Or are all prosecutions created equally?
Yeah, so first of all, the feds love to Bigfoot the states, and I wish that wasn't the case, because it's only about 1 to 2% of the criminal cases in the United States that are handled in the federal courts, with 98, 99% of the prosecutions handled in state courts. But, the feds always think they're the biggest, baddest prosecutor on the block. But here's what I'll say. First of all, I was heartened by Fani Willis announcing that the federal indictment will have absolutely no impact on her case. That being said, I would fully expect that DA Willis and prosecutor special counsel Jack Smith and his team will coordinate on timing and on scheduling of court hearings. But here's the thing. If Fani Willis is in a position to drop indictments publicly in August, that will only require one brief hearing for Donald Trump to attend, an arraignment hearing. And, it's he's an old hand at that now. He's been arraigned in New York. He's been arraigned in Florida.
Right.
He can get in and out of the Georgia courthouse in Atlanta. He can be arraigned, and he can refocus his attention on the federal prosecution that hopefully will be up and running against him.
All right.
As always, I love hearing from Glenn Kirshner. Big fan of Brian Tyler Cohen and everything he puts out. Even a fan of the guy's business model. He's a stand-up dude. I'll tell you. What gives me hope is things like the fact that Midas Touch, Brian Tyler Cohen, Majority Report, even the Young Turks, Kyle Kulinski, these folks are out there genuinely rivaling the equivalent of talk radio in the 90s. But as opposed to hammering people with this obscene, nonsensical talking points, you're getting genuine debate. You're getting genuine discussion. And to that, I like disagreeing with these folks and offering contrasting opinions. Such as, I don't think we should, based on what I have seen in politics, what I've seen in my familiarity, my God, less my familiarity with the law and more my familiarity with scumbaggery. I don't think we should take any sign that Eileen Cannon in this window of time where there could be consequences, treating Trump normally as a huge relief. How is that functional to you? I'm just saying be prepared for it, and don't let it dishearten you if this whole documents case goes south. Take heart in the fact that we have state level, thank God, state level cases. If you're in one of the fake elector states, and this will be in the VOD when I upload it, if you're in one of the fake elector states, pester your attorney general to open up their own investigation into the fake electors. Take heart in the fact that Donald Trump was so blatantly corrupt, so blatantly criminal in his behavior, that he is going to be unable to rely on all of these trials, all of these trials being concluded after 2024, and all of these trials winding up with Trump favorable judges. It's a statistical impossibility. And also, take heart in the fact that some of the shows you watch disagree with each other as ladies, gentlemen, and formal people of nondescript gender. That's a sign that you're taking in information that is thought about critically, and that we will not become MAGA, and we will not end up with somebody like Trump ever leading us. And let's hope somebody like Trump never leads the United States or any country ever again. Let's see what the wicked community has to say. John Bailey, Brian is a sexy guy. Wicked Foxy Dragon, he is my future ex-husband. He just doesn't know it yet. Not if I get there first. Look, I'm not saying I ever have before, but if BTC asked, I mean, you'd have to consider it. The anti-corporatist, well, Jay, you never have to worry about me taking this time slot because my wife can't do a single effing day without calling me at this time. Hey, anti-corporatist, if you haven't already, let me know if and when you're starting up your show. I want to A, be in the audience, and B, I want to play clips here. That would honestly thrill me so much. I would love to do that. What could be taken in multiple ways? Oh, Wicked Foxy Dragon, dang it. That could be taken in multiple ways, Jake. I take all kinds of things lots of ways. Dawned on me, Jack Smith is making an irreconcilable mistake if he doesn't move to recuse her, unless he's aware of facts that aren't in our face. I agree. I think it's about more, like, I've heard a lot of arguments for Jack Smith's behavior in terms of strategy. Like, oh, but this will delay it further if he asks for this or that. I mean, yeah, but doesn't that all just come down to worrying about politics? They started the trial. So follow through with it. Keep going. There's no law. There is no law that says you can't you can't keep the trial going even through the election. I know there's OLC opinions, but those are like opinions, man. Mars Falcon. Today was the day Aileen Cannon became a judge. Yes, exactly. Exactly. John Bailey, Cannon is not trustworthy. Yup. dawned on me. But if you read her order setting the trial date, it's a ludicrous document. Oh, God. Yeah. Wicked Foxy Dragon. It looks like he is about to throw up. LOL, I mean Glenn. And it can take almost a year before you get to a pretrial hearing. Woof. Yeah. Dawned on me. Mark's Biz says late from Denver, Colorado. Welcome. The anti-corporatist. Yeah, Jake will definitely have to talk. Yes. I could definitely use your technical expertise. God help us both. Your show is flawless video-wise. Well, thank you so much. I have learned if there's a golden rule, it is offload. Offload all the work you can onto other things, not on your personal computer. So if you can play a clip live, like if you can play it off a website as opposed to downloading it and playing it off your own machine, you will crash less. But we'll talk for sure. The emails in the description should be working again because I paid my bill. The anti-corporatist. Someone was saying that the judge who is in charge of such a thing may well move the case to Miami for security reasons, in which case that would be a 6-hour round trip for Judge Cannon every day. Oh, wouldn't that just be a special little piece of justice? You know, we got to take it where we can get it. And making Judge Cannon have to do a ridiculous commute like the rest of us often have to do. I used to have a contracting company in Detroit, Michigan. And if you're from the Midwest, maybe you'll appreciate this. I lived in Dexter, Michigan. That meant I drove into Sunrise heading east, and then west I drove into the sunset, which is why I choose to believe that I wear these big honking glasses from time to time. Oh, folks, I had a blast hanging out with you tonight. Gonna get uploading this. Thank you for joining me on this Wicked Wednesday. I was gonna try to. There was a Rashida Tlaib town hall tonight that I was trying to join, and much like a dance in middle school, when some of us still had not an insignificant amount of baby fat, my invitation never arrived. So I'll try to bug Rashida Tlaib because she's talking about some interesting things lately. I think you'd like to hear about it. But in the meantime, this has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for what you can't do. This has been your old pal Jake. I'll see you next time. Damn it, a correction. And I want to do it now because it's interesting. Because that changes things. Anti-corporatist. Good night, Jess Rush. I do want to say, though, anti-corporatist saying it stopped me because it was too many characters. What they were saying is that they would give it to another judge because they didn't want her to have a 6-hour round trip every day. How amazing. How amazing. If in their absolute, this, as the old commies would say, I'm not a communist, but what the hell, let's join them. If this bourgeois allergy to work actually meant that one of them ends up going to prison, because don't want to make Aileen Cannon have to drive for some thing like the most important trial of her life. No. She's not going to get this thing. That would be amazing. Ooh, had to chime in. I'm excited about that. I'm going to look at that. Good suggestion. Good find. All right, bye.